This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The African Union calls for a fair distribution of COVID-19 vaccines ahead of its major virtual summit. The World Health Organization-led COVAX vaccine sharing scheme allocates millions of doses for poorer countries. And we update you on the outcome of a vote to pick members of the Libyan Presidency Council. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to you live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers, and here with the latest in business is Rama.
That's right, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. Uganda's national carrier has acquired a new aircraft in its efforts to expand its route plan. And we'll look at the reforms that Tunisia intends to implement in order to heal the battered North African economy. Details on those stories and lots more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Hannah.
Thanks, Rama. We'll see you in a bit. Well, African foreign ministers are holding the 38th ordinary session as part of preparations for the 34th ordinary session of the African Union heads of state and governments. The meeting, which is being held virtually, has made the issue of battling the COVID-19 pandemic its top priority. Here's CGTN's Girum Chala with more details.
Most of the issues that they have been discussing so far were about COVID-19, vaccination, and also how the African continent can come together so that the fight against the pandemic can be a successful journey over the coming few months. The Foreign Affairs, the International Relations and Cooperation Minister of South Africa, who is also the current chair of the Executive Council, and also the current chairperson of the Commission, the African Union Commission, that is Musa Faki Mohammed, have both delivered a speech, which is a tradition at the Executive Council's meetings before. They both have emphasized that the African Union must lead some of the efforts which have already begun when it comes to, garnering more support for the continent in, those items needed, medical consignments needed for Africa to fight COVID-19, and also they already started effort of having as many more COVID-19 vaccinations as possible for member states, and that journey to begin as soon as possible, and also finding finance for these efforts for member states to have these vaccinations as soon as possible. So far what we know is that this meeting is going to continue for the next one day as well or so, and they're going to decide so many things which are going to be forwarded to the heads of state summit, which is going to start in the coming weekend. This year's summit, the 34th African Union Heads of State Summit, has a theme: arts, culture, heritage, levers for building the Africa we want. This is a theme. It comes with the idea that Africa needs to go back to its roots so that it can find more assets to build its vision. As you know, Agenda 2063, the 50-year plan of the continent, is still on the table, and Africa wants to move forward, despite the fact that at the moment there is a COVID-19 challenge. When heads of state meet on the weekend, they will be deliberating more on ways of coming out of the wood, as African economies at the moment are struggling because of the pandemic. So they're expected to pass many more decisions of coming together and exerting an effort that is going to help Africa thrive and win the challenge that are being faced because of the COVID-19 pandemic.
The World Health Organization is discussing the latest figures about worldwide vaccine deliveries under COVAX. The initiative was launched by the WHO and other agencies in April. It aims to distribute at least 240 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines in the first half of this year. In a statement, it said the allocations would be subject to various caveats, including WHO emergency listing and countries' readiness and acceptance. Well, China says it will provide millions of vaccine doses to COVAX. The global vaccine sharing scheme was established to cater especially for low and middle income countries.
At the request of the World Health Organization, China will provide 10 million vaccine doses to the COVAX implementation plan, mainly for urgent use in developing countries. This is another important move towards the promotion of equitable medical distribution, international anti-pandemic cooperation, and the concept of shared human health.
The Foreign Ministry spokesperson said that the WHO had begun reviewing China's vaccine emergency authorization. He also mentioned the visit of the WHO experts at the Wuhan Virus Research Institute on Wednesday. He said virus tracing was a complicated scientific problem and China would maintain an open, transparent and responsible attitude. Well, the rolling out of the COVID-19 vaccine is now raising hopes as well as fears about equitable distribution of much-needed doses. As many developed economies continue to secure large numbers of vaccines, poorer nations risk being priced out of the market. In this edition of Dimensions, Beatrice Marshall takes a look at the emerging challenges in the COVID vaccine rollout in Africa.
In the race to vaccinate against COVID-19, the world's wealthy nations have surged ahead. Left behind are the majority poorer ones. Yet this was not entirely unexpected. It is in anticipation of this dangerous inevitability that the World Health Organization last year launched COVAX, a facility designed to make the life-saving jab accessible to all, regardless of their economic status. To quote Dr. Seth Berkley, the CEO of the Vaccine Alliance, to wipe out COVID-19, we do not just need a vaccine, but everyone should have it, end quote. But the red flag is up, and it's been raised by none other than Tedros Adhanom, the Director General of the World Health Organization.
If we hoard vaccines and if we're not sharing, there will be three major problems. One, I said it will be a catastrophic moral failure. And two, it keeps the pandemic burning. And three, very slow global economic recovery. So it's morally wrong in terms of arresting the pandemic. It won't help, and it won't also bring livelihoods back. Is that what we want? So it's our choice. And I hope we will choose the right things.
The world he warned could be on the brink of a catastrophic moral failure. Now there is nationalism, but there also seems to have emerged a new kind of nationalism. The so-called vaccine nationalism, where sections of the Western world ostensibly prefer to keep vaccines made by the big pharmaceuticals within their own borders. It amounts to a conspiracy against the poorer and less developed world.
Vaccines are going to be the game changer, but it's not going to be the magic bullet, for sure. Remember, it takes a while for vaccines to work, and also vaccinating people to scale will take time. So that means that we have to continue to enhance the public health measures that we know how to do. As a matter of fact, we are better prepared today to fight the second wave of the pandemic, which is raging on the continent, than we were 1 year ago. 1 year ago, we didn't have diagnostics. We have very limited personal protective equipment. We didn't even know the virus, but we know all of this.
For the world to be safe, COVID-19 must be defeated in every corner, not just some corner. The fight against the pandemic must be collaborative.
One of South Africa's biggest funeral parlors has started to convert shipping containers into mobile mortuaries in anticipation of a spike in COVID-19 related deaths. South Africa is the continent's worst hit by the pandemic. CGTN's Elisa Jamela has more.
Funeral and burial service providers have had to come up with extraordinary measures to deal with the increase in the number of bodies that they continue to receive. As COVID-19 deaths mount, some undertakers are already experiencing a shortage of space and coffins, and they've had to make means to deal with this situation.
Well, obviously we wanted to make sure that we have sufficient capacity especially in those areas where we expected a significant increase in the mortality rate. So that's where we have distributed them to. Like for example, in and around Johannesburg, I think we've got 3 or 4 of these container mortuaries. So just to make sure, that we have sufficient capacity to deal with a significant increase in the number of deaths.
These containers can store up to 40 bodies.
We have sufficient capacity as it is right now. I mean, over the years, if we go back to the early 2000s, for example, we had a significantly higher mortality rate than what we have right now with the HIV/AIDS pandemic, for example. And since then, AFBOB has increased its capacity significantly over the years.
AFBOB is certain that the services of extra containers will be required.
So if the need arises, we can always increase the capacity even further with these container mortuaries. It's actually a very useful and versatile facility, relatively easy to transport to wherever we need them. And it's even after COVID, sometime in the future, they can be utilized for various other purposes.
While South Africa has made progress in the fight to curb the spread of the virus, the number of transmissions in the country is still relatively high. Yulisa Njamela for CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
The Tunisian Health Ministry has released the findings of a study on the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the blind and partially impaired citizens. The study has revealed that tens of thousands were forced to stay at home without employment or support. Those who are still working face many challenges in their daily lives. And then Shuashi reports.
Since the outbreak of the pandemic, it takes Khalid Larousi 3 hours to get to work instead of just 1. He wants to respect social distancing and prevention measures. Khalid used to take public transport, which he now avoids.
Blind people are suffering during the pandemic. Using public transport is challenging as one needs to touch the door of the bus, the train, the taxi or anything around to know where to go. It's impossible to disinfect all surfaces. Ordinary people use hand sanitizers and avoid touching infected surfaces, while we cannot.
Khaled is a primary school teacher at a specialized center for blind people. He says his students, as well as the whole educational staff, are suffering during the pandemic.
I teach blind children who need to touch the paper in order to read. Hand movements are necessary in braille reading. Disinfecting the paper and the books usually erases the writing. Then, it's impossible to understand the text.
The IPSAR, Association for the Leisure and Culture of Blind and Visually Impaired People, has launched a national initiative. The project aims to facilitate access to municipal and administrative services for over 21,000 people.
Civil society aims to make the lives of the blind and the visually impaired citizens easier by using technology and digital services and solutions. The infrastructure in Tunisia is not adapted to the needs of the handicapped.
According to the Ministry of Social Affairs in Tunisia, over 95% of blind people are unemployed. A general lockdown and the economic impact of the pandemic has increased this figure, while pushing thousands of individuals with disabilities into social isolation and poverty.
Civil society organizations have urged the government to put in place a new health protocol which takes into consideration the needs of the blind and partially impaired citizens. Experts assert that the pandemic has unprecedented health, economic and social consequences on this vulnerable population. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
A health tech company in the Netherlands has developed a potentially game-changing method of carrying out COVID-19 tests. It involves breathing into a device which detects the virus within a minute. CGTN's Wanja Mungai has that story.
This is one of the latest innovations in the Netherlands. Known as Pyranus, the machine has been helping medics conduct coronavirus tests differently. Experts from Breathomix, a Dutch health technology company, say it has made virus detection faster and less intrusive.
When you breathe into the device, the sensors measure the complete mixture. The sensor signals are then directly sent to our online analysis platform. And there these signals are translated into what we call a BREP profile.
Major municipal test centers in Amsterdam have started using Pyranus this week.
During the last few weeks we have done an implementation study in the north of Amsterdam, and now it's certified so we can implement it in 4 test facilities in Amsterdam and also in other places in Holland.
The technology has been undergoing accuracy checks for several months. The tests have shown that Pyranus is effective, especially for ascertaining negative results. The medics, however, recommend a follow-up PCR test for those who get positive results. This is to help determine the type of virus. Breathomix has previously produced technologies to detect respiratory diseases like lung cancer and asthma.
And in the past couple of months we have measured thousands of patients with corona, people that don't have corona. So we know what is the average PrEP profile of corona and people without corona.
Given the global surge in coronavirus cases, it is hoped that the technology will make COVID-19 tests easier and the transfer of data more frequent and effective. Wanjamungai, CGTN.
Well, let's now take a short break. When we return, here's what you can expect. We update you on the outcome of a vote to pick members of the Libyan Presidency Council. An historic moment for Burkina Faso after a group of children successfully undergoes open heart surgeries.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back. You're watching news making headlines right here on Africa Live. Well, the UN support mission in Libya has announced the results of the first round of voting to pick members of the Libyan Presidency Council. No candidate managed to get the 70% needed to win the first round of polling. The vote has shown entrenched divisions within the groups drawn from the 3 main Libyan groups. Here is Adel Mrouhi with more.
Libyan politicians at the UN-led talks in Geneva have been divided into 3 groups to represent each of the nation's 3 geographic regions. On Tuesday, they voted for their representative in the Presidency Council. None of the candidates, however, got the 70% of the votes required to win. The electors are now working to prepare 4 lists that include the head of the council, 2 deputies, and the prime minister.
How are these lists arrived at? How will members convince the electors in Geneva? That will depend on the political deals each member will succeed to seal. So now, we cannot say who will lead the Presidential Council anymore, or even which geographical region it will be assigned to. The same goes for the post of Prime Minister.
The southern region recorded the highest percentage won by a candidate. Abdelmajid al-Nasr got nearly 43% of the vote. Still, the results are quite alarming, as they've exposed the divisions within each geographical region in Libya.
I think the recent developments bring us back to a crucial question. What sanction will we see against the parties that reject the result of the vote? This government could face obstruction from local groups if they don't like the result.
Aqila Saleh, the Speaker of the Eastern-based Parliament, got 39% of the votes from his region. Khalid al-Mishri, the head of the Council of State, got most of the votes from the Western region That's just 21%.
No one expected to see a 70% landslide victory as the UN planned for the first round of voting. The results, however, suggest that each Libyan region is far from being united. Libya's selection process has become much more complicated. For a list of candidates to be approved, it must be endorsed by a certain number of candidates from all three regions. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
A crucial summit aiming to end a months-long standoff on elections is set to kick off in central Somalia. Polls have been delayed several times with international partners urging Somali leaders to show unity. From Mogadishu, CGTN's Abdulaziz Bello has more on this story.
Federal and regional leaders have gathered in the central Somali town of Dusamareb. Over 3 days, they will discuss ways to resolve an impasse that has delayed the country's national elections. President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo and Prime Minister Mohamed Hussein Roble have also joined the last-minute efforts.
We expect a positive outcome. The public are optimistic. We saw successful election talks in the city several times in the past. We are here for the 4th summit and we hope to reach a consensus.
In September last year, the leaders agreed on conducting indirect elections. Polls will be held in at least 2 districts in each of the country's 5 regional states. A Jubaland state has opposed to the move, arguing that it's not in control of its Gedo region that lies along the border with Kenya. Last year, the federal government deployed troops in the region after disputing regional elections. Since then, regional forces have clashed with federal troops. The army, securing major victory, captured hundreds of troops loyal to the Jubaland state. Garbaharre, the capital of Gedo, is one of 2 election venues for the next polls. Somalia's army is in control of the town, and the regional leader says polls will not be conducted unless federal troops are pulled out.
One way to solve the stalemate is to allow Jubaland to manage both election venues under its control. Federal forces pulled out of the city and moved towards the border. Police, the Electoral Commission and observers left to manage the polls. The second alternative is for polls to be conducted in regional capitals only. Leaders can debate both options.
The polls have been delayed several times in the past. The mandate of both houses of parliament ended last year, while that of the executive branch is due to end next week. Leaders are expected to agree on a new election timetable in Dusamareb. The election of senators is expected to take place fast, followed by that of members of parliament. Both houses will later reconvene to elect a new president, who must secure a 2/3 majority of votes to be declared winner. Meanwhile, security has been heightened around the conference venue after militant group Al-Shabaab launched a barrage of mortars Monday night. The army says it has killed 3 attackers outside the town. Abdulaziz Bello, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Well, let's revisit our top story now. African foreign ministers are holding their 38th ordinary session as part of preparations for the 34th ordinary session of the Africa Union Heads of State and Governments. The meeting, which is being held virtually, has made the issue of battling the COVID-19 pandemic its top priority. Here's CGTN's Giram Chala with more details.
This year's African Union Heads of State Summit will be held under the theme Arts, Culture and Heritage Levers for Building the Africa We Want. It is expected to be held virtually this weekend. But before that, the Executive Council, which has foreign affairs ministers from the continent as its members, has already started looking at several agenda items. High amongst them is the COVID-19 pandemic.
We are meeting in the context of our global battle against the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has had severe effects on our countries, and yet in a strange way, it has also united us in a manner reminiscent of the solidarity that the Organization of African Union led against South Africa's apartheid regime.
The chairperson of the AU Commission, Musa Faki Mahamat, in his speech also emphasized the need for member states of the Union to come together and combat COVID-19 as one. He hopes 2021 will herald the end of the pandemic for Africa and the world.
The year 2021, despite the fact that it dawns
with new concerns related to variants of the virus of COVID-19 will witness the end of the ordeal for our continent and for the world.
However, Africa still remains behind when it comes to getting access to COVID-19 vaccines. The AU Executive Council has looked at this matter seriously.
The developed North, which has substantial financial resources, has purchased the largest stocks, while we in Africa are still struggling to get our fair share. The painful irony is that some of the clinical trials for these vaccines were indeed carried out in our continent. In other cases, some vaccines are packaged right here on the continent, and yet we as Africa struggle to access them for our populations. This, we believe, is one of the strategic opportunities we should address through advice and leadership of our AU subsidiary bodies.
Among the most important issues to be discussed by the AU Heads of State Summit coming up this weekend include the peace and security situation on the continent and the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. The election of the African Union Commission chairperson and the deputy chairperson, as well as 6 commissioners, will also take place at this summit. Kurumchala, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
More than 30 people have died and many others suffered serious injuries after several vehicles collided in western Uganda. Officials at the Uganda Red Cross Society, who were among the first responders at the scene, say the collision involved 5 vehicles along the Portal to Kasese Highway. CGTN's Michael Baleka reports.
Emergency response teams from the Red Cross Society retrieved 32 bodies from the crash site. One of the trucks involved in the accident was carrying mourners going to the burial of a relative. 5 other people with serious injuries were rushed to a nearby hospital.
A small truck was carrying many people. I can't know the exact number. But they reached this narrow road. It's under construction. It is at night. I don't know what exactly could have obstructed them. They had a head-on collision with another car. And then that was the first lot that fell along that spot. So in a short period of time, another truck lorry also came and joined the bundle and also fell.
According to the response teams, 2 other trucks, one loaded with cement, later rammed into the stationary wreckage of the first accident, leading to many of the deaths. The Red Cross Society says poor visibility is to blame for the accident, but police in western Uganda have started investigations to establish the possible cause of the crash. Traffic accidents that occur in the region are routinely blamed on the state of roads and speeding drivers. Michael Baleka, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
In West Africa, at least 20 people have reportedly been killed and 40 more kidnapped in an attack in Niger State, north-central Nigeria. Our correspondent Phil Ihaza reports from Abuja.
The secretary to the Niger State government, Ahmed Matane, is confirming the incident but has declined to comment on the number of casualties. Some 300 gunmen and motorcycles reportedly stormed 4 villages in the Shiruru local government area of the state, killing at least 20 people and abducting several others. Ahmed Matane says the state government is doing everything in its powers to investigate the attacks and bring the perpetrators to book. He says that through the efforts of the federal government, the insecurity challenges troubling the state will be addressed soon. Just last week, at least 50 people were abducted from some communities in the same Shiruru local government area. President Muhammadu Buhari has tasked security operatives, including the military, to flush out criminals and curb the activities of armed men and kidnappers in the state and across the northern region. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
To Burkina Faso now, where a group of children have become the first in the country's history to successfully undergo open-heart surgeries. CGTN's Inox Okolia has more on this milestone for the West African country.
9-year-old Landry Nyon is among 5 children targeted for cardiovascular surgeries by French charity La Chaîne de l'Espoir. Nyon has been struggling with breathing problems, which his mother often attempted to treat with traditional medicine. It was not until he visited the hospital that he was diagnosed with a heart defect.
The sickness started when he was still very young. We went looking for the leaves and the roots trying to treat it, but it did not work. We were then told to come here and take tests and see what they could do. I am not sad because my child's health will improve with this surgery.
Nyon was then selected to participate in a surgery campaign that aims to bolster the capabilities of surgeons at Tenga Dogo University Hospital in the capital, Ouagadougou.
After the operation, I would like to become a footballer like Messi.
The open heart surgeries were led by European doctors with assistance from their Burkina Faso counterparts who have been trained to undertake future surgical operations independently.
The goal is to operate on these children, but it's also largely about forming a team that can operate alone on children here, and then we can stop having to transfer them to Morocco, Tunisia, or France.
Burkina Faso is among the poorest countries in the world and continues to face major challenges in its health sector. The charity, however, hopes to provide enough educational support to aid the health sector establish its own autonomous cardiovascular unit in the country. It also wishes to undertake 6 to 8 similar campaigns every year and continue training the local surgical team. Insecurity, CGTN.
Well, here is a quick reminder of our top stories. African foreign ministers are holding their 38th ordinary session as part of preparations for the 34th ordinary session of the Africa Union Heads of State and Governments. The meeting, which is being held virtually, has made the issue of battling the COVID-19 pandemic its top priority. The World Health Organization is discussing the latest figures about worldwide vaccine deliveries under COVAX. The initiative was launched by the WHO and other agencies in April. It aims to distribute at least 240 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines in the first half of this year. And the UN support mission in Well, let's now take a look at what's happening in the world of business with Rama.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in business news. Uganda's national carrier has acquired a new long-range wide-body bird in order to expand its route plan. And Tunisia is pledging to make economic reforms in order to heal its battered North African economy.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to the program. Uganda Airlines has added a second Airbus A330neo to its fleet. It's the latest version of the most popular wide-body airliner, and it will enable the recently relaunched national carrier to operate long-haul routes to Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. Uganda Airlines was re-established back in 2019 following its collapse back in 2001. With the details, here's CGTN's Michael Baleke.
Touching down after an 11-hour journey from Toulouse, France, this new A330neo now brings to 6 the total number of aircraft owned by Uganda Airlines.
The fleet plan for the new Uganda Airlines is complete. It will allow us to develop the airlines into a regional as well as an international operator with all the connectivity that we need.
The long-range A330neo aircraft will help to develop long-haul routes to China, India, Dubai and London. The government says the airline will promote trade and create jobs.
When we start flying to those markets, particularly China and Europe, I am appealing to the business community, take opportunity to use these planes, so that you make business for yourselves, but also make business for Uganda.
Uganda Airlines already has 4 Bombardiers CRJ 900 series in its fleet, plying regional African routes. The coronavirus has pushed air travel to the brink, and Uganda Airlines will be competing with regional neighbors like Kenya's KQ and Rwanda Air, who have been forced to cancel some routes because of the pandemic. However, the African Airlines Association says air traffic in Africa is recovering faster than in other regions, even as the second wave of COVID-19 sweeps across the continent.
The A330neo is the ideal aircraft to launch the airline long-haul operation due to its tailored mid-size capacity and impressive range versatility. It is also the perfect aircraft for Uganda Airlines to operate as airlines recover from the COVID-19 pandemic.
Uganda Airlines' strategy is to target cargo and also grow tourist numbers by offering non-stop flights directly to Entebbe International Airport for the first time after 2 decades. But aviation experts argue that will depend on how soon countries relax travel restrictions introduced to curb the spread of COVID-19. Michael Baleke, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Elsewhere, Tunisia is planning to issue debt worth up to $3 billion this year as it looks to stabilize its economy. The North African state is embarking on wide economic reforms amid rising protests caused by years of economic slowdown and, of course, all the disruptions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. From Tunis, here's CGTN's Aden Chouachi with more.
The Minister of Economy and Finance declared that the government plans to go to the international market since the 2021 state budget needs financing in order to push reforms and achieve Tunisia's economic targets. Authorities are seeking a new $1 billion loan guarantee arrangement from the United States, which could help it secure the $3 billion in bond issuance.
This year we have a bond that was issued with the United States guarantee that will be repaid in May and June. As much as we would like to reimburse it on time, and we will do, we will also keep talking with the investors in order to ask them to still be confident in Tunisia and to reinvest in new bonds that could be backed by US guarantee, and we are in the process of discussing that.
Tunisia's 2021 budget forecasts borrowing needs $7.2 billion, including about $5 billion in foreign loans. Ali Khali added that the Tunisian government will launch an economic and financial roadshow in Asia this year.
This new Tunisia will be also a friend of Asia, and we are planning also to address to Asian investors and to see what they could do to invest in Tunisia, whether to invest in some bond issues or to invest in real projects. And we are in the process of finalizing a list of projects, and we will keep visiting many countries in Asia in order to present this program and in order to find the right support from our friends there.
The Tunisian parliament has approved the government's plans. Members of the Finance Commission have said that the state needs foreign financial support to foster the resilience of the national economy.
The financial situation in Tunisia is very difficult. The state needs additional resources to kickstart its economic reforms. This is vital for public finances. The efforts of the Finance Ministry are considerable. Parliament is backing the government's economic orientation.
The House of People's Representatives adopted the draft law approving a €100 million loan agreement between Tunisia and the German Bank for Reconstruction on financing the program to support reforms in the banking and financial sector. The Parliament also approved the €150 million loan contract with the German Development Bank to consolidate public sector reforms. With a deficit estimated at 11.5% of gross domestic product in 2020 and public debt at 90% of GDP, Tunisia is facing an unprecedented economic crisis which has been deepened by the negative repercussions of the COVID-19 pandemic. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
On to Tanzania, where the government is stepping up efforts to stop illegal fishing and improve the fisheries sector there. CGTN's Enoch Sikolia has the details.
Tanzania's fishing industry is among the country's important sources of revenue. Fishing-related activities also sustain the livelihoods of majority of the country's citizens, but the sector has been facing the challenge of illegal fishing. However, there has been a major decrease of illegal fishing in Tanzania since the Ministry of Livestock and Fisheries took over the management of the sector in 2017. Some issues, though, remain unresolved.
There was the availability of many fishes in previous times, but currently it's not that much. Only a few fishes are available now. So I would suggest the government to do some sort of reform to the net uses, because currently they've given us another kind of net which does not capture fish. These other nets are not beneficial anymore.
To help eradicate illegal fishing, non-governmental organizations and other stakeholders in the fishing industry have provided fishermen with appropriate fishing nets and also educated them on the importance of practicing legal fishing.
It's important that we use the community approach, a participatory approach, to ensure that the community are involved in the process of the reforms. And in these reforms that let's say we are banning this particular gear because it has small mesh size, it's destructive, and then the community should be aware and at least be given an alternative. One among the things that we have been trying to put in place is aquaculture practices, because we know that fisheries is declining globally, especially the capture fisheries, and aquaculture is catching up. So by telling people the opportunities that they can get through aquaculture, that way they can substitute their source of income towards aquaculture.
The Tanzanian government wants to secure the fishing sector by promoting investment in the deep sea waters. It also hopes to continue promoting the utilization, processing and marketing of fish products. Enoch Sikolia, CGTN.
Now, Amazon's founder, Jeff Bezos, says he will step down as a company CEO. He'll be handing over that role somewhere in the third quarter to the head of Amazon Web Services, Andy Jassy. Now, his announcement came as Amazon reported a record holiday quarter with profits of over $7 billion in the last quarter of the year, boosted, of course, by online sales amid global pandemic lockdowns. Bezos says he wants to spend more time on philanthropy and the Washington Post newspaper, which he owns among other interests. Jassy joined Amazon as a marketing manager back in 1997. Later on, he founded the company's cloud services division. It's one of Amazon's most profitable but also least known units. On to another tech firm. China's Lenovo Group, the world's largest maker of personal computers, posted a bigger than expected 53% jump in third quarter profit. The group's net earnings rose to nearly $400 million for the October to December quarter. Revenue is up 22% year on year to $17.25 billion. Lenovo's Intelligent Devices Group, that includes PCs and smart devices, also reported strong revenue over the quarter. The PC and Smart Devices Group reported revenues of $14 billion, up 27% year on year. This is Lenovo's second quarter of record growth, and it's thanks to its service-led growth strategy and a lot more of us working remotely and learning remotely during the pandemic. And I'll leave you there for the time being. I'll be back at the top of the hour in global business. So we're looking at the outlook for the mining industry, particularly industrial metals in 2021, as the annual mining Indaba comes to close in South Africa. We'll see you at the top of the hour for that and plenty more. For now, back to Hannah.
Thanks for that, Roman. We'll see you at the top of the hour. Well, let's now take a short break when we return. Museum in Italy reopens to the public with thousands of Egyptian artifacts on display.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. We now go to Italy, where public spaces are gradually being reopened following strict coronavirus restrictions. Among the favorite spots is the Museo Egizio in Turin. It's the oldest museum in the world, hosting Egyptian cultural artifacts. CGTN's Wanja Mugai now brings us that story.
Doors are reopening for the public at one of the world's oldest museums. Museo Egizio is located in the Italian northern city of Turin. This cultural heritage hub had been closed since November last year. The Italian government had ordered its closure, among other public spaces, just before Christmas. The rules were meant to avoid surges of the coronavirus cases during the festive period. Lovers of this historical artifact are excited about the reopening.
There are no big crowds or confusion. It is spectacular to visit the museum this way because you can stay with the exhibits, read without bothering anyone. This museum is wonderful. It's really worth a visit.
The reopening comes with a one-week free entry offer for the residents of Turin and neighboring towns. However, the visitors are required to do online bookings to avoid escalating the number of traffic. The Museo Egizio has been in existence since 1824 and is purely dedicated to Egyptian culture and hosting Nilotic antiques. Tourists get to see numerous artifacts like statues of ancient Egyptian kings. 40,000 pieces are on display at the museum. This one depicts Ramses II, the third pharaoh of the 19th dynasty of Egypt, believed to be one of the greatest and most powerful rulers of Egypt. Others include domestic items from the tomb of royal architect Ka and his wife Mechit. They go as far back as 1400 BC. Christian Greco is a director at the museum. Since the resumption, he has been helping visitors with tours here.
When we were told on Friday night, actually, that we were able to open the museums again, we decided to offer the museum for free for 5 days. And it was a gesture to say, well, the museum belongs to everybody, so you're welcome, come back, this is your house. And within 2 hours, we gave away all the free tickets we had.
The gallery acts as a research center, and as a way of advancing searches in the technology era, the management has installed new systems to improve user experience.
We realized, how could we link the different way we do research? And we put at the center the objects and what we call the biography of the object. Every object has its own biography, its own stratigraphy, its own history. And we wanted to look inside. Sometimes things you cannot see. You cannot see that a coffin was reused. But if I do CT scan and X-rays and ultraviolet photographs, I can look inside and see the different stages of usage.
The reopening of the Museo Egizio is being viewed as a good sign that other popular public spaces could soon be made accessible. Wanja Mungai, CGTN.
Sport news is coming up after the break. Here's a highlight. Top flight boxing returns to Tanzania as a main commercial city at Dar es Salaam.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Time now for the sport news. Tanzania hosted an international